Welcome to our program Hyper Annotations 2.0, organized by the New Center for Research and Practice Parallel Academia Group. And I'm here with editors and one of the writers of the book Relative Intimacies. So could you tell us more about the book?
Yeah, I can answer this question. So the Relative Intimacies is a third book in a series, Intersubjectivity. The whole series are readers that consist of a very eclectic mix of essays, experimental text, but also visual contributions, and in some cases also visual poetry. And the latest book, Relative Intimacies, was our aim, was our answer to or hoped answer to the question about the relations or extending the intersubjectivity onto actors that were previously understood as objects and not subjects. So we were concerned with all sorts of technologies that can sort of enter the realm of intersubjectivity and perhaps change some fundamental beliefs that we have in those notions. So that would be probably the most broad explanation of the theme, but I guess that Samantha's text adds another interesting spin on it, and also the conversations she had with Lynn Hirschman-Listen.
Yeah, so for the book, I contributed a text on artist video, so moving image work that looks at teleportation. But I also had a really beautiful conversation with Lynn Hirschman-Listen, who's an artist that's included in the exhibition here today. Lynn is a pioneering video artist that's been kind of at the forefront of new technology since the 1970s. So she's been working with DNA. She's one of the first people to be working with chatbots, kind of what we know now today as like Siri. She was kind of one of the pioneers. And really looking at how these developments and technologies mediate our relationships with other people, but with also the technologies themselves, and the avatars that are ourselves. So how that relates to relationships of identity and sexuality and feminism, amongst other things.
Could you give us some more details about other collaborations that you have in the book?
It will be hard to pick one. I will try to maybe pick one from each type. So we do have a visual contribution by Tobias Kasper. This one is, I think, answering the question of building relations with machines in a sort of most relatable way. So the series of images he contributed are depicting a person who was working in the museum during his exhibition. For this exhibition, he used a robot dog, and those robots are designed in such a way that they are supposed to establish a friendship with you, and they're actually highly effective in doing so. So the worker of the museum developed such a relation, and by the end of the show, she decided to tattoo the picture of the dog on her leg. And Tobias documented that unexpected spin-off of his exhibition. We also have a text from Aleksandra Przegalińska. I think that is quite interesting in relation to what Samantha said about Lynn's work. So Aleksandra, she's one of the leading researchers investigating natural language and also chatbots. In her text, she's moving towards thinking about biological implications or use of biology in a construction of computers themselves. And I think this is quite interesting trajectory, because it's very much mirroring the artistic work of Lynn. Maybe, I don't know if you, Kolya, or you, Samantha, want to add something to that trajectory, because I think that's quite interesting in Lynn's work. Would you want to?
Yeah, I mean, with Lynn's work, I think there's so many channels in which she's researched this, but I think one of the most exciting projects is her work with DNA. So she basically coded with DNA following the different like 4 lettered strains of it, and created her own. She created her own antibody, like the Lynn Hirschman antibody. She used the acronym of her name to create her own DNA sample. And it's this really, I think, interesting and important exploration of like, how do you create this this biological modification within technology, and how do you add a poetics to this? So what could be more intimate in some sense than your own DNA? It's the building block of like what composes of all of us. And then also how do we have this kind of like unit that's in some level very sterile and scientific, but to infuse a little bit of poeticism within that, I think is a really interesting project.
I would like to ask you about two previous publications that you were working on and the relation between the new the new release and the previous ones, and also where does the idea come from?
Yes.
For the book.
I'm part of this collective Look Cantor with Josefina, and the main subject of our works is intersubjectivity. And we, how to say, we always, we first, we are very research-based artists, so we've been reading and researching a lot on the topics of the works we're then later creating. So we thought then at the time it makes sense to also like combine that with research and artistic works from other people that are close to the subject. So this idea rose to establish this series of books. So at the beginning we'd been more interested in language, and our first book was the Intersubjectivity Volume 1, Language and Misunderstanding. And then later it shifted towards the interest of artificial intelligence. And so the actual book at the moment deals with the idea of how it is when humans talk to other agents. And in the case of our works, it's been chatbots.
We are meeting here at the 59th edition of the Venice Biennale, and I would like to ask you, what is your opinion on this year Biennale? What is your critique? What have you seen? What did you like?
We haven't seen that much yet. I mean, we saw like the international pavilion and some of the pavilions which hadn't had such a huge queue. But it's like a little bit repeating. I mean, I first have to say that last time at the biennial, there was this amazing Lithuanian pavilion that somehow rescued the whole experience. And it was also more or less the only thing really worth to remember. This year, we haven't figured out yet anything of that strength. I mean, I at least haven't figured out anything of that strength. And we see a lot of concepts that questioning this idea of a national pavilion in general, which, I mean, is totally legit, and it's also a little bit weird that it's not like able to overcome that in a different way. And I mean, I would suggest to just rename a national pavilion to like a a content-related pavilion.
I guess I have a different answer of what I've seen. I thought the French Pavilion was a really beautiful project. I mean, Zainab Sadira is a filmmaker. She's the first artist of Algerian descent to represent, I guess, France at the Venice Biennale. And it's looking at the Algerian independence movement in the 1960s. And she and the curators kind of took over the pavilion and created it as a film set. And then in one of the rooms, they've created, I guess, like a cinema screening room to play her film, which is kind of the main centerpiece of the project. And it's almost this beautiful, magical realism documentary, personal take, but also including archival images and clips. And it's a really interesting. It's like a 23-minute film that I thought was really thoughtful and well done.
To be the third one to answer. All the good answers are taken. Well, I think I'm actually glad I haven't seen everything yet, so I feel a little bit more confident answering this question with the credit of a fool who has no knowledge till now. I'm still looking for something that would move me the way that Lithuanian Pavilion moved me last time. I feel that, I do feel that this problem of answering the question of a national pavilion is something that is inescapable in Venice. It is definitely an outdated format, and I think it's one of those that everybody knows that regardless of how outdated it is, it's not going anywhere. I think that the radical idea Kolya is suggesting is not very realistic, and I'm interested into looking into those answers that French Pavilion came with, choosing Algerian artists, Polish Pavilion with choosing Roma artists, and also the Sami Pavilion. I think those gestures they do exercise the answer to the problem in a way that I'm kind of way more willing to lean towards than, for instance, the approach that the German pavilion had, which is of course also an approach of questioning the national pavilion itself. I feel that the little of the curated show I've seen, I've liked so much. I also imagine that it must have been a very uphill battle in a current political situation. I also feel that this Biennale we will get to understand quite a while away from now, because I think things are a little bit fresh. I mean, there is a war going on right now. I believe that there are many people who might be questioning the idea of going on with the Biennale altogether, and I would not have an answer to this. And I feel also that we will only away from now know whether the response that artists, curators, institutions took to the current political situation. I don't want to say unprecedented, but in the same time, I mean, unprecedented to a large extent. I think there's a lot that we will keep on learning from this experience for a while, and I think that maybe it's also maybe last thing I would want to add is that there's also a type of a work that I feel sometimes works very strangely with the Biennale format. I mean, the type of a perception we have here is also very, very special. I mean, no one should see that much art in such a short time. This should not be happening, and it is with a great disadvantage to the artwork. And we were just yesterday talking about Stan Douglas' work, and we felt that the work actually hit us a couple hours after leaving the pavilion, and I think that we were actually discussing this and thinking about how would that be to see this work not within the Biennale context, not on the day when we've saw million other things and had our brains filled. And what does it mean for the work to actually be very quiet, but then still re-emerge in your thinking hours later to fight for its space in your attention? So I think the answer will come long way from this point.
Thank you so much for talking with me, and I would like to ask where the publication will be available.
It's available in all the selected art-related bookstores, and of course you can buy it online at Sternberg Press, and it's also distributed by MIT Press, particularly interesting for the people living outside of Europe. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.